All right, guys. So once again, Bill Maher is saying something that I agree with. Now, last week, he talked about the NFL playing the Black National Anthem and how that's segregation. And I told you guys, I definitely agree with him on that. And now he's talking about how the liberal media is playing a role in scaring the ish out of people over this pandemic to the point where they're afraid to go out, right? So some more truth serum from Bill Maher, who at this point seems to be one of the only people on the left that is a actual voice of reason over there, even though I do disagree with him on a lot of issues naturally. Now, speaking of, agreeing with people who may not necessarily agree with you on a lot of issues, there's a lot of conversation going on in social media about Nicki Minaj, right? And the fact that the right has kind of rallied around her, okay, in regards to, her right to freedom of speech. And you have some people that are speaking out about this saying, well, guys, remember, even though we agree with Nicki Minaj on this issue, it's not like she's a shining example of conservatism. She's not necessarily on our team. And to me, guys, I just find it so ridiculous that people feel the need to point that out, right? Nobody is saying that Nicki Minaj is a conservative or that she's a role model for children and young girls. Nobody is saying that. But it is okay to agree with people on certain points out of principle, right? It's okay to agree with somebody like Nicki Minaj in regards to her right to freedom of speech. But I think people are smart enough to understand that doesn't mean that she's on our team, right? And I just find it hilarious how people are having this conversation, because there's some criticism that people are directing at conservatives saying that, well, you guys don't like Nicki Minaj and the Cardi B's of the world, until, they say something that you agree with. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it's supposed to work, right? Yeah, you might not necessarily agree with, the messages that Nicki Minaj puts out there in her music. But if she says something that you agree with, then yes, I can agree with her on that point. The same way I don't necessarily agree with a lot of things that Bill Maher says, but when it comes to certain points, I can agree with him and I can say, yeah, this is correct, right? I mean, it's really that simple, right? That doesn't mean that he's on my team, okay, or do I endorse everything that he does or everything he said? No, right? It just simply means that I agree with you on this specific point. Again, it's kind of crazy to me that people feel the need to even try to point that out when it doesn't need to be pointed out. It's okay for the right to rally around Nicki Minaj because freedom of speech is important, right? And I think what shows how much you believe in that is you defending somebody that you don't even agree with. You don't even agree with their lifestyle or their music or the content they put out, but defending their fundamental rights shows you how important that right actually is to you, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about what's happening. Yes, at some point, people will probably go back to bashing Nicki Minaj about her music, but it is what it is, right? It is what it is. But like I said, let's get into Bill Maher and him spreading a little bit of truth serum here about the liberal media and also Democrat Party too. I'll throw them in there and their role in terms of fearmonger about this pandemic that, in my opinion, is not working in their best interest, right? It's actually hurting them, right? It's hurting them in terms of convincing people to get vaccinated, and it's also hurting them on the economy, right? Which honestly, it's going to cause Joe to lose the presidency. That's what's going to happen, and Democrats are probably going to get swept in 2022 as well too if they keep it up. Now, before I get into this, like I always do on any of these videos, I got to give a disclaimer. I'm not making any claims about the virus. I'm not making any claims about the pandemic. I'm not making any claims about the vaccine. I'm not making any claims about the mask. I'm not making any claims about anything. Okay, if you have any questions about the mask, the vaccine, the pandemic, the virus, whatever, please consult your doctor. This conversation is purely about public policy. I am not making any claims whatsoever. So let's read here. HBO real-time host Bill Maher blasted the liberal media on Wednesday for scaring the ish out of people during the coronavirus pandemic and said they need to take responsibility for those afraid to leave their homes as a result of fear-mongering coverage. Quote, I have to cite a survey that was in the New York Times, which is a liberal paper, so they weren't looking for this answer, Maher said on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live. The question was, what do you think the chances are that you would have to go to the hospital if you got COVID? And Democrats thought it was way higher than Republicans. Maher continued in the clip flagged by Newsbusters. The answer is between 1% and 5%. Maher noted a whopping 41% of Democrats thought it was over 50%, while 28% thought it was 20% to 49% of COVID patients wound up in the hospital. 70% of Democrats thought it was way, way higher than what it really was. Maher said liberal media has to take a little responsibility for that, scaring the ish out of people. Kimmel laughed as Maher continued his point. Quote, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's much harder for every touring act to sell tickets in blue states. They're afraid to go out of the house, Maher said. In red states, it's all good to go. Maher assured potential attendees of his stand-up comedy tour that things would be safe as social distancing and masking rules would be in place. Quote, you did get it, Kimmel said, referring to Maher's own bout with COVID. Quote, I got it after I was vaccinated and had no symptoms. That's maybe because I was vaccinated, Maher said. Okay, so you guys kind of get what Maher is trying to say here, right? Bill Maher is basically trying to say that, hey, the liberal media and their fearmongering, and I'm throwing the Democrat Party in there too. I wish he would have mentioned that. They are costing me money, right? They're costing me money because I can't sell tickets to my comedy shows in blue states because people don't want to go. People are so afraid to come outside and to interact in the real world and to live their lives that basically I can't make money, right? And it's hilarious to me how these liberals turn, okay, when it comes to their money being impacted, right? For example, I did a video about Whoopi Goldberg when she found out that tax the rich, right, aka tax the 1% means tax her. All of a sudden she was concerned, right? She was like, oh, I'm freaking out about this. Well, why is that? Because these same liberal policies that the Democrat Party is pushing on America is going to negatively affect them, okay? And when they find out that it's negatively affecting them, all of a sudden their opinions change, right? All of a sudden they become reasonable people. It's kind of crazy how that works, right? Bill Maher here, I think, again, is in the same boat where he's like, I can't sell tickets. I can't make money in these blue states because these people are so afraid to even come outside, even though a lot of these people are vaccinated, even though we have these rules in place and these measures in place to try to keep people safe, they still just don't want to do it. Why is that? Well, the reason is because the liberal media and the Democrat Party as well, they're out here fearmongering because they want to try to scare people into getting vaccinated. And ultimately, fear doesn't work. Okay, fear doesn't work. You can't scare somebody into doing something. That never works. Like I said, you have to let the data and the science speak for itself. And that's why I try to tell you guys, like, the liberal media and the Democrat Party in terms of their strategy, right, in terms of trying to handle this pandemic, is actually terrible. Because what they're essentially doing is it said you should be afraid, to the point where they're locking down blue states that a majority of people have been vaccinated in. And a lot of people are looking at that and saying, okay, well, if all those people have been vaccinated, why do you need the lockdowns, right? What do you need it for? Okay. So that, in my opinion, works against the actual incentive to get vaccinated, which is what the Democrat Party claims they want. But because they would rather fearmonger and push fear on people, what they're actually really doing is that they're causing people who already agree with them to be scared and to be fearful, which is impacting businesses, okay, in these blue states. It is making it harder for these businesses to run and to operate and to make a profit because people don't want to go outside. People don't want to go to restaurants. People don't want to participate in the economy, which by extension is hurting Joe Biden. It's hurting Joe Biden. And this is why I get so annoyed when people try to go after Trump for his handling of the pandemic. Because Trump went out there and he said, listen, I'm not going to fearmonger people, okay? But, there's a lot that we don't know. However, freedom is important. And he gave the states the option to handle the pandemic in a way that they see fit, while at the same time on the back end, when it came to Operation Warp Speed, doing the things that he needed to do to try to get this vaccine out there, right? And to try to get things going back to normal as quickly as possible. And in my opinion, again, looking back at it, and I said this at the time too, that was the best strategy. That was the best strategy because the economy is important, right? When the economy is bad, people's lives are negatively impacted by that as well too. People lose their lives because of a bad economy too, okay? So you have to have balance. right? And I think Trump did a great job of not trying to fearmonger, of trying to reassure people that things are going to be okay, that we're going to get past this, that yes, this is something we're dealing with right now. And, states, they can handle it the way they want to handle it. Maybe it was a mistake letting Cuomo handle it the way he wanted to handle it, right? Maybe I should criticize Trump for that. But outside of that, it's like, dude, balance freedom. And on the back end, did what he needed to do, okay? Whether that's vaccines, whether that's testing, whether that's resources and equipment, he did all that stuff. Even though the liberal media said, oh, he didn't. He was so bad. No, he actually wasn't. He actually handled it the way that it should be handled. And if Biden actually took a page out of Trump's playbook, he would probably be in a much better position when it comes to this pandemic. The fear mongering from the liberal media and the Democrat Party is really hurting them, whether that's handling the pandemic, whether that's the economy. It's just not a good strategy, in my opinion. It's a terrible strategy. And I find it funny how Bill Maher's little anecdote here kind of helped point that out in regards to how this stuff is costing him money, and by extension, it's costing other businesses money. Because it's hard to do business when people are afraid to even come outside and spend money in the first place. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.